Have you ever felt helpless? This can be one of the most painful feelings ever to experience. Helplessness is more than just sadness. It's the feeling that you can't change your negative situation and that you might be stuck feeling that way for a long period of time. Shaking off helplessness feels like an uphill battle. Even if you have your friends and family who want to help you, you might express your feelings only to hear things like this: "You can do it. Don't be so down on yourself. Just give it a try." Unfortunately, the feeling of helplessness is a belief that you can't do it. This belief may be so strong that trying to believe anything else would seem absolutely ridiculous. Even though your friends and family have good intentions with their encouraging words, the words don't stick. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how people find themselves in a situation where they feel helpless. We'll also look at a few key studies in psychology surrounding something called helplessness. There's actually science behind the way that we talk to ourselves and develop a feeling of helplessness. Throughout this video, you'll learn that we have the power to develop a belief that we actually can't control our destiny, but we also have the power to develop a belief that we can and will control our destiny. And that is what the theory of learned helplessness is all about. The theory of learned helplessness was developed in the 1960s at the University of Pennsylvania. Graduate student Martin Seligman, one of my favorite psychologists, was conducting an experiment on dogs when he noticed that they seemed, well, helpless. They were given a very simple task, but many had given up on even trying. What caused this helplessness in these dogs? Were certain dogs helpless, or were all dogs at risk for learning this helplessness? His experiment consisted of 3 groups of dogs. The first set of dogs was the control group. The second set were given shocks, but were given the ability to turn off the shocks with a simple action. And the third set were given shocks without any way to turn off the shocks. So the second set of dogs had control over their shocks. They could push a button and they could stop getting shocked. The third set had no control over their shocks. Imagine what this taught the dogs about their ability to control the environment and remove themselves from a bad situation. Not surprisingly, the third set of dogs learned a feeling of helplessness, that they couldn't change their situation. After the initial exposure to the shocks, the dogs were given a second set of shocks. In order to stop the shocks, all the dogs had to do was just walk to the other side of the room. Just a few steps could stop these new shocks. The second set of dogs, the ones who could actually control the shocks the first time, were significantly more likely to simply just walk across a room and stop the shocks. What's more important is that they were significantly more likely to actually try to stop the shocks. However, the third set of dogs, the ones who originally had no control over whether or not they got shocked, were much more likely to literally sit down and just accept the shocks. How often are we as humans like those dogs? We just sit down and let bad things happen to us. Well, the dogs weren't helpless because they weren't able to control their situation. They felt helpless because they believed they couldn't control the situation. The ideas that I am helpless or nothing I do can fix my situation are based in your beliefs. At the root of learned helplessness are beliefs that you are out of control and that you do not have power to make changes. Just like the dogs in those experiments, we too, as humans, can develop the feeling of helplessness through our own beliefs. But let's dig a little bit deeper. How do you create these beliefs? Let's say you're an aspiring singer, but you hold on to a limiting belief that says you might not be very talented. Deep down, you truly believe that maybe you won't make it big. But you fight this belief by entering a singing contest, and during the singing contest, you start to compare yourself to all the other contestants. You tell yourself that they are more talented and that you don't even stand a chance against them. When it comes time for the judges to pick a winner, you don't even place. When you get home, you tell yourself that you're not a good singer. You use the failure of your loss to justify these beliefs. The more you reflect on that singing contest, you use it as evidence to tell yourself that you're not a good singer, and the stronger that belief comes. Before you know it, you are so set in your belief that you quit singing altogether, even though you love it. Let's take a step backwards and look at the facts. Does the result of one singing contest automatically mean that the people who didn't place were bad singers? Not necessarily. Are there successful singers who have lost contests or even have been told that they weren't very good? Absolutely. Do singers have more than one shot to enter a contest and prove their worth as a great singer? Of course. In this situation, the singing contest is similar to the first set of shocks in Seligman's experiment. You experience a failure, aka losing the contest or getting shocks, and you felt like you couldn't control the outcome. When you face another opportunity in the future to overcome that failure, like the second set of dogs, or maybe it's another singing contest, you assume that you have no control over the outcome and you just sit down. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. We see the way that our failure leads to helplessness, which ultimately leads to more failure. But the subsequent failures aren't because the helpless person isn't good enough, or can't control the outcome of the situation, the subsequent failures come from the belief that they can't even control the situation and the feeling of learned helplessness. So I've got a test for you. Now that you can see the cycle of failures, feeling of helplessness, and more failures, do you actually have control over your ability to break that cycle? Take a minute to think about this. Seligman introduced the world to the theory of learned helplessness in one of his best-selling self-help books of all time, Learned Optimism. Optimists, or people who are less likely to be affected by learned helplessness, are likely to say, yes, you can break the cycle and prevent failures caused by feelings of helplessness. Pessimists, on the other hand, or people who are more likely to fall into the trap of learned helplessness, may say, no, it's out of my control. Here's a secret for you. There are ways to help yourself transform into an optimist or a pessimist. You can go either way. There are ways to break out of that cycle of learned helplessness and prevent future failures and roadblocks. You can actually use optimism as a tool to give yourself the best chance at success. What if I told you that in Learned Optimism, Martin Seligman created a way for you to shift your beliefs and the way that you explain your failures? His process has given many people the tools to look at their situations in a new light and be more optimistic. These explanations attribute to a person's overall beliefs about their abilities and the ability to control their destiny. I dive right into these processes in my new course, The Psychology of Beliefs. I recently spent a few months diving deep into the psychology of beliefs simply because I was trying to help my students reach more success in the past courses that I've created. And I found that what was limiting a lot of them wasn't stuff that I was teaching, it was their beliefs about themselves. So I started researching and testing, and I came up with a simple system to find your limiting beliefs, pluck them straight out of your brain, and to give you the tools to actually control your mindset. If you're interested, you can check out the full Psychology of Beliefs course for under $20 with the link in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and even more importantly, I hope that you learned something.